rahmatullah. In this presentation, we will talk about Islamic calendar. We'll start with the simple question. If I want to reserve a plane seat, say for the 15th of Shawwal, is it possible? I can tell you it is not possible. It is impossible. The reason is the 15th of Shawwal is not one thing. So there are many 15th of Shawwal, and there's no agreement on the date. So this will cause a problem if I want to do some reservation. Not only that, since a lot of people use sighting for determining the new month, the new lunar month, what happened is that I have to wait until the 1st of Shawwal to know when the 15th of Shawwal. So there are several problems here. So that's why we need a calendar that can be useful for planning and also to end the chaos that we experience these days. And it will help in recognition of our occasions so that they can become official holidays. Otherwise, we will still be in the chaos we are living in. The set or the system of the sun, earth, and moon has several motions. Now, these motions really give rise to the different calendars. So the motion of the earth around the sun, we get the solar calendar. From the motion of the moon around the earth, we get the lunar calendar. We'll be looking at two motions, the spinning of the earth around its own axis and the rotation of the moon around the earth. Okay, so here a schematic of the earth. So we are looking at the earth from above the North Pole. The rotation of the earth is indicated by the arrow. So the earth is spinning counterclockwise. We have our friend here standing on the surface of the earth, looking north. So at this point, the sun is overhead, so it is noon at his time. Then as the day progresses, he reaches this point. Now, this point is the sunset point, where the the sun just dipped below the horizon. This is the line of the horizon. And the sun is setting at his left. And then we have midnight, and then the sunrise. The sun will rise to his right. So this diagram kind of help us in identifying the directions during the day. Now we will add some more information on that diagram. So here we added the phases of the moon. So the main phases, basically the new or conjunction, the new moon, when the moon is born, and it's called the conjunction point. The conjunction really means that these three objects, the earth, the moon, and the sun, are aligned. And then we have our friend looking north again, but at this point here, we remember that this point is the sunset point. And then we have the moon phases. So we have the new moon, we have the first quarter, the full moon, and the third quarter. and it takes a month to cycle through these phases. So from a day-to-day basis, those phases will be constant. We will not notice their movement. The moon will move a little bit, but it won't. We will ignore that. At this point here, at the conjunction, it is not possible to see the moon. So the moon has to move just a bit off this alignment so that it can reflect some sunlight, so it becomes visible. Usually that takes a day or a little bit more. So we are showing here that some time has passed, maybe a day or a day and a half, and the moon here, the young moon here, is visible just above the horizon. And this, our friend here, is standing at the sunset. The sun had just set and dipped below the horizon, and the young moon is visible in the western horizon, above the western horizon, to his left. So to search for a new moon, you have to look at the western horizon. Now suppose that it is the middle of the month, so we have a full moon here. The rest of the phases are not there. So in that case, the sun will dip at sunset. The sun will be dipping and setting to his left, but the moon will be rising to his right. So it will rise, continue to rise until midnight. At midnight, the full moon will be overhead, and then it will again go down until it sets at the sunrise. So at this point here, the sun will rise to his right and the moon will be setting to his left. This diagram is really useful in identifying where we are in the lunar month. Now let's talk a little bit about calendars, and starting with the solar calendar. So the actual year, or tropical year, has 365.2422 days. Now this fraction is a problem for people who are trying to come up with a calendar. So let's start with the Julian calendar. Julian calendar has 365 and a quarter. Now 0.25 is not that far from 0.2422. However, with time, the error accumulates. So by 1582, Pope Gregory noticed that the calendar is way out of whack with the seasons and it needs to be fixed. So to do that, they had to eliminate 10 days, drop 10 days. So after October 4th comes October 15th. And they came up with the new system called the Gregorian calendar. Now this calendar is an improvement over the Julian. It has 365.2425. Still, it's not exactly the same as the actual thing, the actual year, but it's good. The error here, because there is a slight difference here, a tad over the actual year, this difference will accumulate so that around 5,000 there will be a need to drop a day, which is not so bad. Now let's talk a little bit about the lunar calendar. The lunar month is 29 days and half, a little bit over half. So the year gives us 355 days. Clearly, it is shorter than the tropical year by around 11 days. So that difference makes the lunar month float over the seasons. For example, Ramadan 2023 will be March 22nd. Now, the next year it will be on around March 11, so on and so forth. So it will come back to March 22nd in 33 years. So there is a cycle here. Now, the lunar calendar doesn't take the seasons into account. So we have seen that these months kind of float around the year. And that's why people can try to combine the lunar and the solar. They call it lunisolar. Example of these calendars, the Hebrew, the Chinese, and the Hindu calendars. Now, the feature of these calendars is that the year could have 12 or 13 months, and there is a need for that. The way to kind of fix the lunar calendar, so to speak, the lunar calendar, is by sorry, by inserting an additional month into the year. So, for example, one of the schemes, the intercalary month is added in 7 out of 19 years. So 7 of these years have 13 months. The rest have only 12. And the reason for the 19 is that it follows the Metonic cycle. Now, this Metonic cycle, because it is a cycle where the lunar phases come back after 19 years. So that's the lunisolar calendar. The issue here from the Muslim point of view is that the number of months in the Quran is stated very clearly. Let's see the translation of the ayah. Allah has determined in his book, when he created heavens and earth, there shall be 12 months, 4 of which are holy, so wrong not yourselves in them. Clearly there are only, or supposed to be only, 12 months in a year. So and also in the Sunnah, in the Sermon of the Prophet. So lunisolar is not really an option from a Muslim point of view. We have to be lunar. There is something to be said about the advantages of the lunar calendar. It connects Muslims to their history, of course, and it's a unifying tool for Muslims. It is related to rhythms, natural rhythms in the body, and there is some research on that. There's a utility for it for submarine applications, and it is the Muslim contribution to the world. And we have to say that nobody said that we cannot use the Gregorian calendar in addition to the lunar calendar. In fact, we can use both. So that's a beautiful integration. So we use other people's product and they use our product. So there's really some very beautiful spirit here of integration and collaboration with the rest of the world. Now, we have put some criteria for calculating the beginning of the lunar month. Those are really simple and straightforward. First off, the calculation should be valid globally. It cannot be valid only locally. Islam is a global religion, and the criteria should be valid globally. Also, there's a need for simplicity. People need to understand what's going on. And this criteria should not produce something that contradicts sighting. Now, that's a big one. If you have calculation that contradict actual sighting, then your work is really has no value. We have also suggested that there are two possible errors. We call the first one false positive, and the other one is false negative. So example of the false positive, let's say I tell you that tomorrow is Ramadan, but sighting the moon will be next to impossible, will be very hard. So in that case, the inability to sight the moon, we call it false positive. On the other hand, if I told you that tomorrow is not Ramadan, according to my calculation, and then somebody comes down and say, well, I have seen the moon in this place, and he actually saw it. So we call this false negative. Now, this kind of error is unacceptable. The first type, the false positive, can be tolerated, but the false negative should not be tolerated and should be eliminated. There are a number of methods for determining the beginning of the lunar month that has been in use. The first one is al-Qura, used in Arabia. This criteria has two conditions. So the first one is that the moon should be born before sunset or Maghrib, and the new crescent should set after the sun. So if you have those two conditions fulfilled, then you have a new month, new lunar month. Now the solar elongation. What do we mean by solar elongation? Solar elongation is the distance, the angular distance between the sun and the moon. So you set a limit and you say, let's say my condition is 8 degrees. So if I have 8 degrees and above, then I have a new month. There is something called Danian limit that says the minimum distance is 7 degrees. Below that, it's not possible, even not possible, to see the new moon. However, take a look at this. Now, this very thin crescent is only 5.5 degrees from the sun. So, granted that a special filter was used for this picture, but still 4.5 degrees is way lower than the Danian limit. Now let's move on to ISNA and ECFR. ISNA is Islamic Society of North America. ECFR is European Council for Fatwa and Research. They use the same thing. So the crescent, the height of the crescent above the horizon should be 5 degrees, at least 5 degrees, and the new moon should set after the sun, and the solar elongation is at least 8 degrees. Remember those numbers, 5 and 8. We'll come back to them in a bit. Then there is Yellow criteria. So it contains several factors like solar elongation, crescent width, etc., etc. The work of Khalid Shawkat is a variation of this Yellow criteria. Then there is the sighting record time after conjunction. Believe it or not, there are people who are interested in this and they pursue it. And on the books, the record time is 15.5 hours. For the aided sighting, a little bit less than 12 hours. Then there is the conjunction, the central conjunction, which is the astronomical event, which we can calculate very easily. Well, not very easily, but easily, maybe a better word here. Okay, take a look at this nice graphics here. So this is from moonsighting.com. This is the work of Khalid Shawkat, which we talked about previously here. It's very popular because everybody kind of goes to that website and pull those graphs because most people think that this is the real moon. These graphs represent the real moon. They are not. They are an approximation, mathematical approximation of the possibility of sighting the moon. But they are nice. The graphics is nice and give you a good idea where the moon will be sighted or can be sighted. So let's take a look at this red area. So in the red area, he says D, call it D, visible with optical aid only. All right, so there are some other areas that are easier to sight the moon. For example, the green, you can see the moon easily with the naked eye. So let's focus on the red area. Now look at this. Look at this yellow line running across the red area. Now what is this line? Okay, you mentioned yellow line, elongation 8 degrees, and moon altitude equals 5 degrees. Well, we have seen those numbers before, right? Sure, it's the ISNA criteria. Now, you really don't want any line here cutting through this red area, because it means that your criteria basically doesn't accept good part of this area. So everything to the right of the yellow line is acceptable for the ISNA criteria. The problem here is that there could be possibility of sighting or actual sighting, which happened before, and the criteria for ISNA will not acknowledge that. It will reject it, actually, and say, no, it cannot be seen. So that's why I think the ISNA criteria is not a good one, and it needs to be changed. So what is the alternative? In my opinion, the central conjunction is a great method. It has many advantages. I ran a simulation and found that the false positive, meaning that the moon will be hard, although it will be born, but it will be hard to sight about 20% of the time, which is reasonable. Now the details of the simulation and details of other subject that mentioned in this presentation is in a research paper that I have submitted to the International Hijri Calendar Conference in Istanbul in 2016. So if you are interested, then you can read that paper. I hope that I have clarified some of the issues around the Hijri calendar or the Muslim calendar. I ask Allah to bless you, and I'm looking forward for your feedback. So please give me your feedback. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.